Let's dive in today. We're going deep, exploring the psychology of women, and specifically, how it plays out in relationships.
Sounds intense.
It is. We're talking about the book, The Truth About Women, a hard look at female psychology. No sugarcoating here.
This book really gets into it, challenging a lot of the conventional wisdom out there. It starts with biology, evolution, the deep stuff.
Yeah, it makes a strong argument right off the bat about those biological forces shaping women's psychology. Hormones, for example. Estrogen, progesterone.
Yeah.
Big impact, right?
Huge. The book talks about how those hormones, especially tied to the menstrual cycle, can really influence emotion. Energy levels, too. Even, get this, preferences. Changes things up.
So you're saying it's not just a stereotype about mood swings. There's something deeper going on biologically.
Exactly. The book connects it to evolution, too. Argues that these hormonal shifts were crucial back in the day, shaped women's reproductive strategies, how they chose mates. It's fascinating.
That makes you think about those differences between men and women, right?
Yeah.
Like how much is nature, how much is nurture.
The book definitely leans into those inherent differences. Not saying one is better, but that understanding them is key to navigating relationships.
Okay, so beyond biology, the book also dives into feminism and its impact on, well, everything.
Yeah, it's a nuanced take. It acknowledges the positive changes, obviously, more rights, opportunities for women. But it also talks about this double bind. Women expected to be career powerhouses, A&D, still fulfill those traditional roles.
Like be the perfect mom, wife, homemaker, all while crushing it at work. That's a lot.
The book argues that it creates this internal conflict for women and maybe contributes to some of that stress, emotional instability we see.
It makes you wonder if it's all worth it, right? I mean, if you're constantly feeling pulled in opposite directions.
It's a tough conversation, but one worth having, for sure.
Okay, let's get into something I think a lot of us have experienced. Emotional projections. When someone throws their own feelings onto you. The book has this great example with a woman named Sally.
Ah, Sally. Yeah, the author talks about how she'd accuse him of being insecure, jealous, but it was really her own stuff. Projected onto him, led to huge arguments because he was like, wait, what? This isn't even me.
So how do you deal with that? It can't be easy to stay calm when someone's basically blaming you for their own emotions.
The book's advice, don't take it personally, which easier said than done, right? But it says reacting defensively just escalates things. Instead, try to figure out what's underneath that projection. Is she feeling insecure, anxious, neglected? Get to the root of it.
So it's like detective work almost.
Exactly. You got to read between the lines. And the book says men need to get better at that. Emotional intelligence, they call it. Women might not always say what they mean directly.
Okay, this is where things get interesting. The drama test. The book says women use drama to, get this, gauge their partner's commitment, like a test.
A test, yeah. Ties back to that evolutionary stuff. Women looking for a mate who's stable, reliable, someone who can handle those intense emotional moments, so they create them almost.
Wait, so it's not just them being, difficult. It's a subconscious way to see if you're a keeper.
That's the argument. They need to know you can be the rock. Stay calm when things get heated. Show that you're in it for the long haul.
That's a whole new way to look at those arguments, huh?
It is. Makes you wonder how much of our behavior is driven by these deep-seated instincts we don't even realize.
Okay, this is going to be controversial. Bad boys. Why are women attracted to them? The book has a take on this.
Oh, yeah. It challenges the idea that it's just about looks or rebellion. Suggests it's a primal thing. Women looking for strength, dominance. Those qualities often associated with bad boys, even if it comes with a side of danger.
So it's about what that bad boy behavior represents, not necessarily the bad behavior itself.
Exactly. Those primal instincts kicking in, even if, logically, a woman knows that type of guy might not be the best choice long term.
It makes you think about how much control we really have over our attractions.
Definitely. And whether those instincts are still relevant in today's world.
All right, last big topic for this part of our deep dive. Changes after marriage. The book doesn't sugarcoat it. It says things can shift, and not always in a good way.
Right. It talks about how some women, after that honeymoon phase, might become more emotionally unstable. Priorities might change. The book ties it back to, you guessed it, biology, that drive to secure a mate, build a family. Once that's achieved, the focus shifts to nurturing, protecting that family unit.
So it's not necessarily malicious, more like an instinctive response to a new stage of life.
That's what the book argues. It encourages men to be understanding, patient, realize that both partners have to adapt as things change.
It's a lot to take in, for sure. But I feel like we're just scratching the surface here.
Oh, we are. There's so much more to unpack.
We'll be back in part 2 to dig even deeper into the truth about women. Stick with us.
Right. Welcome back to our deep dive. We're getting into some really interesting stuff now, picking up where we left off in the truth about women.
Definitely. We were talking about those changes after marriage. And, it made me think about something else the book touches on, that victim mentality.
Ah, yeah, that's a big one. Especially when we're talking about power dynamics in relationships. The book suggests that some women, they kind of fall into this pattern of seeing themselves as victims, like always blaming external factors for their problems, feeling powerless to change anything.
It's like they're always getting a raw deal.
Right. And the book argues that this mentality, it can be really damaging in a relationship, creates a lot of imbalance.
But where does it come from? Is it just like a personality thing? Or is there something more to it?
Well, the author suggests that modern feminism might have played a role. Now, hear me out. He's not saying feminism is bad, but that maybe it unintentionally reinforced this narrative of women as victims of a patriarchal society.
So it's like this idea that women are always being oppressed, taken advantage of.
Yeah, and the book argues that this narrative, it can become a self-fulfilling prophecy.
I see what you mean. So how does this victim mentality actually show up in relationships?
Oh, it can manifest in lots of ways. Emotional outbursts, playing the blame game, refusing to take responsibility for their actions, that kind of thing.
Okay, so that sounds pretty toxic. Does the book offer any advice on how to deal with that? It can't be easy to stay grounded when you're constantly being blamed for things.
Yeah, it's tough, but the book is pretty clear about this. Don't give in to those manipulation attempts. Set boundaries. Communicate your expectations clearly. And this is important. Don't reward that behavior with attention or sympathy.
That sounds hard,
Yeah.
especially if you care about the person, you want to help them.
It is hard, but you have to remember you can't change someone else. You can only control your own reactions. And sometimes protecting yourself means walking away.
We talked about emotional projections before, but the book goes even deeper with this concept, and it's honestly pretty eye-opening.
Yeah, one of the things I really appreciate about this book is how it gets into those subtle ways that women communicate, like those emotional projections. They can be a way for women to express their feelings indirectly by accusing their partner of the very things they're feeling themselves.
Right, so if she's accusing me of being insecure, maybe she's the one who's actually insecure.
It's possible. The book uses this example with the author's partner, Sally. She accused him of being insecure about his career, but it turned out she was the one struggling with career insecurities, projecting her own feelings onto him.
So it's a way to avoid confronting those uncomfortable emotions.
Exactly. It's like a defense mechanism. And the book encourages men to really pay attention to this dynamic, to learn how to read between the lines, because sometimes those accusations, they're not really about you. They're about her own internal struggle.
That's a game changer, honestly. I'm starting to see how this book can really help you understand those unspoken things in relationships.
Absolutely. It's about moving beyond those surface level interactions and understanding the deeper motivations, the emotions that are driving the behavior.
Okay, gotta ask about this. The book talks about high-maintenance women.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, I think we've all met a few. What's the book's take on this, and how do you even deal with that?
So the book defines high maintenance as those women who need constant attention, validation, always have a long list of demands. You know the type. And honestly, the book says these relationships can be incredibly draining, often not worth the effort.
So the solution isn't to try and, meet all those demands.
Right. It's about recognizing the pattern and setting boundaries. It's about protecting your own well-being and realizing that you deserve to be in a relationship that feels good, not one that leaves you constantly depleted.
You mentioned choosing the right partner earlier. Does the book give any tips on how to actually do that?
It does. It goes beyond the superficial stuff. Sure, physical attraction is important, but it's more about looking deeper, paying attention to her character, her values. Emotional maturity is key.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about finding that deeper compatibility.
Exactly. Because that initial spark, it can fade. But if you have that strong foundation, that's what will last.
Okay, back to the changes after marriage thing. We talked about how the book links it to biology, that primal drive.
Yeah, the book is saying that those shifts in behavior, they're not necessarily intentional. It's not about her trying to control you or the relationship. It's more like an instinctive response to this new stage of life.
So it's like those primal instincts are kicking in again.
Right. It's about survival, ultimately, protecting the family unit. And the book really encourages men to be understanding of that, to have patience, because both partners have to adapt as the relationship evolves.
I think what makes this book so different from other relationship advice is that it adds that layer of biological understanding.
Exactly. It's not about placing blame. It's about understanding the bigger picture, the forces that are shaping how men and women interact.
It's been a really fascinating discussion so far, and I know our listeners are eager to hear what else this book has to offer.
Oh, there's more. Trust me. We'll be back for the final part of our deep dive. Stay tuned.
We're back, wrapping up our deep dive into the truth about women. We've covered a lot of ground, some pretty intense stuff.
No doubt. This book really pushes you to think differently, challenge some assumptions.
And that's what we're here for, right? To get to the truth. One topic the book tackles that I think is especially relevant today is female narcissism.
Yeah, it's a big one, and often misunderstood, I think. The author argues that female narcissism, it can be a lot more subtle than the classic, male narcissism we often hear about.
So how do you spot it? What are the signs?
Well, she talks about this tendency to manipulate through charm, a constant need for validation, being super sensitive to any kind of criticism. It's about looking at those patterns, seeing how they impact you and the relationship.
So not just one isolated incident, but a consistent pattern of behavior.
Exactly. And the book talks about how damaging that can be in a relationship.
Yeah. I mean, if you're constantly walking on eggshells, trying to avoid upsetting them.
Yeah, it's exhausting. The book talks about how it can lead to emotional manipulation, gaslighting even, where you start to question your own reality.
That's scary. So what can you do if you realize you're in a relationship with a narcissist?
Tough question. The author is pretty blunt about this. You can't change someone's personality, no matter how much you care. It's about recognizing those patterns early on and then setting firm boundaries.
Protect yourself.
Exactly. And sometimes the healthiest choice is to just walk away.
That's a tough pill to swallow, but it's true.
Right.
You can't stay in a toxic situation hoping things will change. Okay, let's shift gears for a minute. Talk about something that's become a huge part of our lives and relationships, social media. The book has some interesting thoughts on how it affects women.
Argues that social media, it kind of amplifies certain aspects of female psychology, like that need for validation, the tendency to compare yourself to others.
It's like everyone's presenting their best selves online, their highlight reel. It's easy to get caught up in that.
And the book says that can fuel insecurities, create unrealistic expectations. You're comparing your real life to these curated online personas. It's a recipe for feeling inadequate.
But what's the antidote?
Awareness, I think. Being mindful of how social media makes you feel and being willing to disconnect if it's having a negative impact on your mental health, your relationship.
Easier said than done in our hyper-connected world. But I think it's so important to remember that what you see online, it's not always the full picture. Speaking of things that can be tricky, the book also dives into women and money, which, let's be honest, can be a source of tension in a lot of relationships.
For sure. It talks about how women might view money differently than men, prioritize emotional spending maybe, attach sentimental value to purchases.
Interesting. So it's not just about individual personality, but also maybe societal expectations, those traditional gender roles.
I think so. It's about understanding those influences and then, like we said before, having those open and honest conversations about money, spending habits, financial goals.
So important. It's about working together as a team, right? To create a financial plan that works for both of you.
Exactly. And that takes communication, compromise, a willingness to understand each other's perspective.
Well, this has been quite a journey. I feel like this book has really opened my eyes to some of the complexities of female psychology.
Me too. It's definitely a thought-provoking read, and I think it offers some valuable insights into how to navigate relationships in a more conscious, intentional way.
It's about going beyond those surface level interactions, recognizing the interplay of biology, evolution, and all those societal influences that shape how women think and feel.
And ultimately using that knowledge to build stronger, more fulfilling relationships.
Absolutely. If anyone listening wants to dive deeper into this topic, The Truth About Women is available on Amazon Kindle and Google Play Books.
A lot to think about.
It is. But hey, that's what these deep dives are all about, right? Thanks for joining us. Until next time.